We're going to be in Judges chapter 13-ish this morning. Judges chapter 13 will be starting in verse 1. It says, "And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God, very awesome. I did not ask him where he is from, and he did not tell me his name, but he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with this child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now, when your words come true, what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, If you detain me, I will not eat of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one whose works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die, for we have seen God. But his wife said to him, If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for many blessings, God. We thank you for allowing us to come to your house, God. We thank you for being a God of second and third and fourth and fifth chances, Lord, and for being willing to forgive and willing to put us back on the right path when we make mistakes, Lord. Lord, I pray that as we study your word, as we look at the life of Samson, Lord, I just pray that you'd help us to see how we can overcome our own mistakes in our own lives, Lord. Lord, I just pray that we would draw closer to you. And Lord, I just pray that you reveal yourself to us in this service and speak through me. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. This morning I want us to talk about how to live beyond our mistakes. Maybe I'm the only one here, but I make mistakes just about every day. I mess up on something consistently. When I was typing my paper for my dissertation, I'd be typing along, and I think I type faster than my brain thinks, or my brain thinks faster than I can type, or something, and I have to try to catch up. And so I'll be typing, and these little red lines will appear under what I type, and it's telling me that there's a mistake, that there's something wrong. I misspelled something, or I used it incorrectly, or something like that. I'm not a bad speller. I'm a pretty good speller. I don't know where it comes from. I guess because Mom's not a good speller. I don't really know if Dad is or not, but I've always been a fairly good speller. But when I type, for some reason, I like I said, either my brain gets ahead of my hands or my hands get ahead of my brain, one or the other. and I end up misspelling stuff. And I'll have all these red squiggly lines throughout my paper. And the good thing is I don't have to read back through what I wrote to try to find my mistakes. All I have to do is hit this little button at the top of the window, and it'll start popping up all mistakes. All the ones that I made, and it'll offer suggestions on how to correct those things and how to fix them. And that's really, really good, except when you get to a word that even spell check says, I don't know what this one is. You got me on this one. And you have to go and either retype what you were trying to say and put in the correct word, or look up the word that Google the word that you were trying to say and put in kind of what it means and what's the word for this, and then you can get the word that way. But it's good to have those options to correct your errors and to correct your mistakes. If you've watched any kind of YouTube videos or anything, it's no doubt at some point in time you've seen an ad for this program or software called Grammarly. Maybe it's just me as a teacher. I see it a lot. I don't know. But Grammarly is basically this program that you can install it, and it'll look over your paper and it'll offer suggestions on how to change entire sentences or change entire paragraphs to make it sound better. And of course, now you've got AI that's become popular, and you can use it to kind of edit your documents and things like that. But it's still not perfect. It still has a lot of errors and issues with it. But it's nice to have those options to highlight the mistakes and to see what the mistakes are, and then to be able to go back and quickly and easily fix them, and to quickly and easily make the changes that you need. Sometimes I think it would be nice to have a spell check for our daily lives. Have something that when we make a mistake, it's highlighted in red and it automatically shows up to us, hey, you messed up here. And then be able to click a button and just go back a few minutes or go back a few hours or whatever it may be and redo that mistake, re-correct it, make the correct choice or make the correct decision in that moment. It would be nice if we could automatically fix things as we went along. But we don't really have that, but we do have a source of how to fix mistakes. We do have a person that we can turn to that will help us fix those mistakes, and it will let us correct bad decisions and bad choices in our life. As I said, there's nobody here this morning who's never made a mistake. On the way up here this morning, we were talking about something in the van, and Julie admitted that she was wrong. And I told the kids to write that down. I said, "It's 10/29/23." I said, "Write that down. Your mother said I was wrong. I want you to put that in writing so we can refer back to it at another point in time." We all make mistakes. She said that was her first one. So she's made one too. So we're all in the same boat now. As I said, I make mistakes every day. I do stuff all the time that winds up being wrong, or being misspelling something, or saying the wrong word, or putting the wrong part in the wrong place, or something like that. And some of those mistakes are easy to fix. If it's I grabbed the wrong motor to put on the robot or whatever, it's easy. I go grab the right one, put it on there. Or if it's a word that I misspelled, it's easy. It highlights it for me, and all I got to do is click the button to change it, and it makes those changes for me. This morning, though, I want us to look at a man who made some pretty big mistakes in his life. He made a lot of mistakes. And finally, at the end of his life, he did go back and correct some of those mistakes and try to make those things right. The man that I'm talking about, of course, is the man of Samson. And Samson has always been, for some reason, one of my favorite characters in the Bible. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because of his strength or something like that. And I just always admired that and thought it'd be cool to have that power just to be able to destroy whatever I wanted to, and pick up gates and carry them wherever I wanted to, and all this stuff, and just have that awesome strength that he had. And of course, as a kid, I'm not really focused on the mistakes that he made. I'm not really looking at those things. I'm looking at his amazing physical abilities and the things that he was able to accomplish with that. Samson, though, was a judge of Israel. He was a ruler over Israel for 20 years. And he seemed to have everything going for him. He had the strength, he had the prestige, he had all of that going for him. Yet Samson was one of his own worst enemies. Samson just seemed to not be able to get out of his own way a lot of times. And Samson made some huge mistakes during his lifetime. He had supernatural strength. He had probably was a very good-looking person. He had God working in his life, but even all of that didn't keep him from messing up over and over and over again. And because of that, he brought all kinds of troubles on himself. The story of Samson's life is told in Judges chapter 13 through 16. Where I read chapter 13. We're not going to read the other two chapters this morning, but we'll talk about his life just a little bit as we go through this. If you want to read those, you can obviously look ahead and read those things. But his life is told in those three chapters, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in Judges chapter 13, verses 3 and 5. We already talked about his mother couldn't have children; his mother was barren, and so this man, this angel from the Lord, appeared to her and said, "Hey, you're going to have a child. You're going to conceive and bear a son, and this." Here's what you got to do. You can't eat anything from the vine. You can't drink strong drink, have any wine, and you can't eat anything unclean because this child is going to be special. He's got a mission from God, and he's going to do something for the Lord, and he's going to be a Nazarite from his birth. And so you've got to keep yourself clean during this whole pregnancy and during this time of conception and everything. He says, "No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he will begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines." And so he was going to begin this process of leading Israel out of the captivity that they found themselves in. It's interesting as you think about this, they found themselves in captivity because they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and yet the person that leads them out of captivity was someone who continually did stuff that was evil in the sight of the Lord. But still God was able to use him, and God was able to forgive him and to use him to start this process of delivering him. So the angel tells the mother there that Samson is going to have these supernatural abilities that he's going to be able to use to accomplish this mission that God would have him to accomplish. And he's going to help his people out of the Philistines. In chapter 13, verse 24, it says that the woman bore a son, and she called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. But as Samson grew up, his moral character went down. There's two really big problems that Samson had to deal with in his life, and that was anger and lust. And he never really learned to control either one of them. All of his life, both of those things plagued him over and over and over again, and they later eventually caused his downfall. He frequently got angry and had blow-ups and flare-ups, and a lot of his motives for his actions were revenge. He would blow up, he'd get angry at somebody, and he would go out and slaughter a bunch of people. Or he would send foxes through a field with fire and catch the field on fire just because he had gotten angry about something that had happened. There was one time that he had made a bet with some men, and in order to pay off the bet, he went out and killed 30 people to give the garments and stuff to those that he had bet. Samson had a long history with anger and with the things in his life. He had done the foxes. He had turned them loose in a field, and because of that, some men came and killed Samson's ex-wife and her father. And Samson became very angry about that. And what he did was he swore he would take revenge on them. And in Judges chapter 15, it tells us that he went and he basically killed those people. He ripped them limb from limb. Later, he took the jawbone of a donkey and he killed 1,000 men with that. He was a strong man, but he had a temper. But not only did he have a problem with anger, he also had a problem with his lust. He was physically strong, but he was morally weak, and he never really got control of this problem. In chapter 14, Samson saw a Philistine girl, and he decided that he wanted her. And so she looked good to him, and so he took her as his wife. And it didn't really matter that she wasn't an Israelite, that she wasn't of the same tribe of Israel that he was in. It didn't matter that his parents advised him against it. All that mattered to him was that she was good looking and that he wanted her to be his wife. And then later on, she would eventually be killed because of Samson's actions. In chapter 16, Samson had a relationship with a harlot, and her name was Delilah. And he fell in love with her, and later on, she would betray him. She kept coming and asking, what's your source of strength, Samson? And he would tell her a lie, and then eventually he ended up telling her the truth, and that led to his downfall. Both Samson's wives betrayed him, but Delilah's betrayal would eventually lead to his death. Samson had a rough life, and as you look at the story, you can only step back and shake your head at the things of his life and wonder, well, Samson, how did you get yourself in this mess? How did you get yourself in this situation? But then you realize that Samson's life shows us the most common ways that we bring trouble on ourselves. And these ways still foul us up today because human nature is universal. And it really has not changed throughout the years. We all tend to fall into the same kinds of traps that Samson found himself in. Samson made a mess of his life because he made mistakes over and over again. And if we can identify some of those principles that cause us to make those major mistakes, then we can work out the problems that we're in right now, and we can avoid some of those mistakes in the future. So this morning I want us to look at how can we avoid those mistakes? How can we live beyond those things? How can we overcome them? How can we avoid them altogether? The first step in doing that is to learn from your mistakes. You have to learn from the things that you do wrong. Samson never really seemed to learn from his mistakes. He never really caught on that, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't be going here. Maybe I shouldn't be dealing with these people. If you don't learn from your mistakes, that's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make. Coach Levi's little football team. We've been going since July, basically. About the middle of July is when we started practicing. We've got one more game left. We've got 3 more practices left. And we've got kids, including Levi, who are making the same mistakes over and over and over again, no matter how many times we try to correct it, how many times we try to fix it. And it's frustrating. It's as a coach, it's frustrating because you look at them and you're like, why are you still doing the same thing over and over and over again? And it's because they're not learning from those mistakes. How many of you have ever touched a hot stove? You put your hand on the eye by mistake or something like that, or you burnt yourself in the oven putting something in the oven. You got burnt. Well, how many of you ever did it again on purpose? Nobody. Nobody ever sticks their hand on the stove and wants to get burnt. Now, you've probably done it again by accident, but nobody wants to do it on purpose. You've got to learn from your mistakes. The book of Proverbs tells us in Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 5, it says, "O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense." If something burns you, don't do it again. You have to learn from your mistakes, and if you don't, then you're going to have to repeat those mistakes. The second point that we can see is that we have to choose our friends wisely. Somebody said if you want to soar with the eagles, then you can't run around with the turkeys. You'll eventually become like the people that you spend most of your time with. The Bible puts it this way. It says, bad company corrupts good morals. So if you surround yourself with bad company, it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, eventually you're going to start slipping a little bit. You're going to start falling back some. That's why it's so important to choose your friends wisely. Samson was defeated by bad associations. He had unhealthy relationships, even though God had chosen him for a special task. You look at his life, his birth was a miracle. His mother couldn't have children. His parents couldn't have children. And all of a sudden, she was pregnant. She was having this child that this angel had told her about. Because before he was conceived, his mother could not become pregnant. And God told her that she would have a special son who would be a deliverer of Israel from the Philistines. And so Samson was special from the very start. But the choices that he made, the relationships that he had, led him astray. This morning, God has a special purpose for each of us. But we get ourselves into trouble when we choose the wrong people to hang out with. Good friends influence us. When we're around other good people, they influence us to do good. But so do bad friends. The question this morning that you need to answer is, do your friends keep you from living for God? Do they tear you down or do they build you up? Do you find yourself having to conform to things that you don't like to do when you hang around those people? The book of Proverbs warns us over and over again about negative associations. Constant exposure to wrong attitudes and wrong values will eventually take its toll in our lives, and it's always easier to pull somebody down than it is to lift them up. So what kind of friends should you have? The kind who bring out the best in you, who lift you up, who encourage you, who make you a better person, who make you a better Christian, or the ones that bring you down? The third thing that we can do to overcome our mistakes is to take God seriously. See, Samson was very careless about his spiritual life. He never did really get serious with God, and it showed up more than once and in more than one way. In the first place, Samson was always doing his own thing. He was always doing what he wanted to do. He lived for himself. He lived a very selfish lifestyle, and he let his own personal desires dictate his actions. Samson lived by the philosophy of, if it feels good, do it. God's plan for Samson was greatness, and that's God's plans for you. He has a purpose for your life. You weren't put here on earth by accident. But Samson's patterns was carelessness. He just kind of took it for granted and never really got serious, and the result eventually was uselessness in his life. Another thing we see in Samson's life is that he never prayed until the end of his life. We never have any kind of recorded prayer from Samson until we get to the very end, right before his death. Samson was impulsive. He didn't ask God for direction. He just went ahead and did whatever he wanted to do. We would save ourselves a lot of problems and a lot of pain if we would just stop and ask God for direction before we jump into something with both feet. Samson turned to God only when he got in a jam, and that was at the end of his life. To a lot of people, God is just kind of an afterthought, a convenience. When things get tough and they get in a jam, then they turn to Him. But when everything's okay, they just kind of ignore Him. That seems to be Samson's life. He never really got serious about living for God until the very end of his life, and after everything had finally fallen apart. He was captured by his enemies. They put his eyes out. They made him go blind. They gouged out his eyes. And they made him grind at the grain mill, which was a job that normally was reserved for animals. And Samson finally, at the end of his life, prayed to God. As you'll recall, Samson, at the end of his life, was brought to the great temple of the false god Dagon. And there was thousands of his enemies there, and he was brought there so that they could laugh at him, because this is the strong man of Israel, the champion of Israel. Look at him. He can't see. He's got to be led around, and they're sitting there poking fun at him. Samson was placed between two of the main pillars of the temple, and finally, at the end of his life, he cries out to God, he prays out to God, and with every last ounce of strength that he had, he's able to push down the columns, and the roof comes collapsing down, and the building collapses down, and it kills everybody in the temple, plus the 3,000 or so that were on the roof. God had sent Samson to conquer the enemy. And now God was able to accomplish more through Samson in his death than He did in his life. And really, if you think about it, that's a sad statement on Samson's life, that God was able to use him more in his death than He was during his life. But Samson finally did defeat the enemy. Because God gave Samson a second chance, Samson had the greatest victory at the end of his life. You can't help but wonder what kind of life Samson would have had if he had prayed right from the beginning. Why did he have to wait until everything fell apart before he finally turned to God? And the result of Samson's prayerlessness is that he totally lost his potential in his life. How many times do we do that? We don't turn to God in prayer until everything's all messed up, and we lose the potential in our life. The most important thing, though, that anyone can do to live beyond our mistakes and overcome those and avoid them is to never give up on God. Samson's life would be a very tragic story if it just ended there. But it doesn't. What we find is that in the New Testament, Samson's name is mentioned among the heroes of the faith. Even with all the mistakes that Samson made, even with all his anger, and even with all his impulsiveness, God puts him on the list of those who lived by faith. In the book of Hebrews it says, by faith the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. And what more shall I say? For time would fail to tell me of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, and put foreign armies to flight. So it's amazing that at the end of his life, even with all the mistakes that Samson had made, he still finds himself mentioned in the heroes of faith in Hebrews. In a sense, it's a comforting fact that we see his name there, because we realize that God can take a person who made mistake after mistake after mistake and still use them to accomplish something in his life. If God only used perfect people, then nothing would ever get done. But instead, he uses ordinary people, those who have weaknesses and have failed in life. This morning, maybe you feel that you've messed up your life so badly that God will never love you and He'll never use you. But you can remember Samson. God never gave up on Samson, and He's not given up on you. God sees your potential, and He remembers why He made you. Because you were created for great things. So what should you do if you're a Samson? Well, if you've made some major mistakes in your life, you need to do exactly what Samson finally did and turn your life over to the Lord. Give Him all the pieces and let Him say to you, I will give you the power to break loose out of these things that are tying you down and causing your hang-ups and preventing me from working in your life. Only God knows the greatness and potential in your life, but you'll never bring it out on your own. He must do it in His strength. He can start today. Just stand with me.